You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are hypnotherapist and urban shaman Carlos Casados and acupuncturist and occupational therapist Satch Purcell. For this episode, the Authenticity team took a road trip from our home in Orange County up to Los Feliz in Los Angeles to interview John Kim, the angry therapist. Now, in addition to being a licensed therapist, he's also an author, speaker, teacher, and all-around badass. We were really impressed with this guy. He's got a great sense of humor, but he's also got a lot of serious wisdom. His new book, which will be coming out soon, is called I Used to Be a Miserable Fuck. One of the main themes of this conversation is masculinity, what it means to be a man in today's society. Now, whether you're a man or a woman or none of the above, there's something for you in this conversation.
So, what is your background exactly? So, you're a therapist, licensed therapist.
I used to be a screenwriter, got married early, and my definition of happy was to sell the $1 million screenplay so I could have the Range Rover Porsche combo in the horseshoe-shaped driveway in the Hollywood Hills. That was my big blueprint. I grew up in Los Angeles, and so I was chasing that, right? And got married, a beautiful actress, and the marriage started falling apart. She was started to get a lot of success, and I was at home, usually at a Starbucks 14 hours a day, just punching keys, like a death of a salesman kind of thing. And, I got some work. I sold like one thing, but it wasn't enough to sustain as a career. And I was talking to my own therapist, and he said, if you can't make movies, what do you want to do? And I was like, I've been wanting to make movies since I was 10. And if I can't move people by the masses, I'll do it. I want to do what you're doing. I want to be a therapist. And in my idea, I thought that was like the perfect life, office with the silver balls and the wrinkle-free pants. It just seemed like it's like a nice, it's like, I'm just this seems very comfortable to me. I wouldn't do this. And you could help people. It's empowering. So he told me to go back to school, and I'm a C student. I was the kid in school who my SAT scores were so low, the vice principal called me down and asked me if everything was okay at home. And I was wondering if he would have asked me that if I was an Asian, but I just C student, went to a Cal State school, just fucking around my entire life. So the idea of going back to school was like, no, I can't do it. He said 2 years, it's just a master's, you already have your BA. So I did that, but what he didn't tell me is after that, that's just the beginning. There's 3,000 hours of to get your license, and then there's this giant exam at the end.
Right, so it's a couple years of school, and there's all that clinical stuff.
So the school is nothing. The school was like, I actually got straight A's. It was really fun. It changed my life. And then it was now it's time to get hours, and that's where I think the system is broken. You're working shitty jobs. You're getting no pay. Sometimes you have to pay to get the hours. You have student loans. It's lonely. It's burnout. So by the time you come out of that system, you're like, I don't even want to be a therapist anymore. Luckily for me, the safety net was when I was going through this journey, I was also going through a divorce, and I created this little blog called The Angry Therapist. And it was my way of it was a journal that I decided to just, express myself with, And my very first post was called My Fucking Feelings. And I think people thought it was interesting that there was this Korean therapist who was like, I'm divorced. I'm also a therapist. I'm broken. How can I help you? And then I started documenting my life. I never planned to create anything. It was just kind of for me. And so I found CrossFit. I started documenting my hero's journey. Got some tattoos.
Those are really cool tattoos, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Fascinated with them.
They're bookmarks, so I don't get tattoos
really
for visuals. That means something to me. And then I said, you know what? I think there's a better way to help people. And people ask me why I'm angry because the system's broken, And so that's when I created the Catalyst Life Coaching Intensive. So my own life coaching training. That was the birth of that. So that is now a full startup with a team. And then The Angry Therapist is me and my own brand. And through that, I created this book, which comes out this year. And the fire for that book was when I was working in a nonprofit, and I learned that we live in a fatherless nation. So dad's either not present physically or emotionally. And so I saw the product of that. So I saw thousands of kids, high school kids, struggling with addiction, eating disorders, all that. and the girls were standing too close. The guys were either wanting to be me or wanting to fight me, and none of them had dads, and so that was the beginning of me getting very interested in men. Not in that way, but you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's okay. You're safe here. This is a safe space.
Okay, great, perfect. that's and that's it. And so the flag I've been running with is creating a dialogue for men and to men to challenge their definitions, not for me to put mine on them. But
nice.
And
That's
just I think the temperature of today in the world, millennials. I don't know. The kids coming up, I think it's very confusing for them. What does a man look like? How does a man love?
Yeah.
Guys, authenticity, vulnerability, all that stuff. A lot of times, people, men especially, in locker rooms and stuff, see that as a weakness. All of that, and a lot of people are miserable. A lot of men, but they're not allowed to feel that way or show themselves because we're supposed to fix shit. So if we're miserable, we need to take care of that. So there's a lot of logic, a lot of, instead of like actually allowing yourself to be okay or feeling that you don't, I'm not happy or I'm sad or I'm heartbroken,
Right. So if you're a man and you're miserable, that's the first thing you got to fix. And how the hell do you fix that?
I think there's shame behind that. There's embarrassment. Right. There's like, I got to man up, okay, I'm miserable. That like, I need to man up. And a lot of times when we're miserable, we do things where we're running away from ourselves instead of toward ourselves. So that's going to be through any addiction, obviously, from food to working out to drugs, alcohol, all of that stuff, or maybe work. Men drown themselves in work, thinking that that's going to make them happy. So we end up having a lot of men, I think, in this world who are walking shells, right? They're not three-dimensional beings with feelings and discomfort and tears and all of that. They're just like
no emotional intelligence,
and then they get into relationships, and then you can't build anything if you don't show yourself, and then they all come to me. No, I'm just kidding. And then also like seeing therapists is also a no. So it's like then where do you go for
there's
help?
Some shame with that too.
Right.
Admission of weakness.
So they just go to the gym.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or they just pour themselves into work or other things. So they're basically running away and they're numbing.
They build a brick house around themselves.
100%.
Yeah.
They create a moat around their castle, I guess. What does it look like for a man to go on a date these days is very different. Yeah. So I grew up in the 80s, so when I was dating, it was maybe the 90s. If I got a date, which meant that I had to go actually, have the balls to ask someone out, and she said yes
with real words,
it was a fucking event. Then I would go wash my car. I would line the CDs up in my I would go to the movie theater, buy the ticket. Like it was a whole thing. Mm-hmm. Today, it's basically humans are just salad dressing. We're just swiping. You see someone, and you're gonna meet them for coffee for 10 minutes.
As you said, swipe left culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Disposable filters. Also, we hide behind our phones, so who appears probably isn't the fantasy you have in your head from their Instagram.
Yeah.
And then it's a meeting and it's an evaluation. There's a lot of judgment. There's a checklist, and it's like speed dating. Right? It's like really fast, and there's no human connection. There's no human exchange. Yeah. And so when everyone's doing this, dating is dead. I wrote an article on Medium called "Dating is Dead," and it wasn't that the article was so amazing, but it went viral because it hit a pulse. Because everyone can they get it. They're like dating is dead, and so all the women that kind of come to me for relationships and they're single, completely frustrated. No one says they love what dating has become. Like I've never heard that. It's like I hate what it is. It's frustrating. Men ghost. I get catfished, like all these bad, like disconnecting, Well, and so it doesn't set up men for positive experiences.
Right. I think Tina was mentioning on the way up here just that she's noticing that she feels a little bad for a lot of guys that she knows because there's so much pressure for the guy to be the initiator, and yet, what constitutes as an unwanted sexual advance these days? It starts to get a little bit gray because even though there may be the intention of being respectful, there's still the pressure that you have to be the initiator.
Yes.
So how do you do that? How do you do that safely? How do you do
Right.
that without overthinking it to the point where you now messed with your ability to feel
Right.
a passion, to feel the urgency? I mean, intimacy requires feelings.
Yeah, I just wrote something, and it was intimacy is about connection, not skin.
Yeah.
And we live in a world where being intimate is terrifying. We live in a world where we could hide very easy.
To overthink it almost.
To overthink
these days.
it, right? We also live in a world where, because of the internet and how we live on our phones, we're not seeing people, we're seeing caricatures, right? We're seeing brands. Everyone has a brand now, including
So
myself.
true.
Yeah, we're seeing how someone is presented instead of who they really are. And a 10-minute meeting at the coffee shop isn't enough to peel layers, and so there's a huge disconnect, and it's like, well, what do we do? I'm just one door in.
Hashtag identity.
Identity, right? And I'm going in through the way that makes sense to me in my story, and that is creating conversation with men. So I think it's not the only way in, but I think that's one way in. To go in and start making some kind of ripple or change.
Nice.
That's.
Nice.
I'm glad you're doing that. I see people like Jordan Peterson also kind of making an effort to despite the controversy about Jordan Peterson, I really enjoy listening to what he has to say.
Yeah, very smart guy.
Smart guy.
And
argumented.
Controvery is not bad.
Yeah.
It's conversation.
It's getting people to pay attention.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson, Marcus Aubrey, Lewis Howes, just a lot of guys out there creating a dialogue, some kind of dialogue, or being an example of a different type of guy and living their truth.
Yeah.
Even like Gary Vee, who's doing a lot of stuff, or his definition of entrepreneurship. So I think that's a good thing, and then we get to pick who we want to absorb and who we want to be like,
Yeah, I think one of the earlier pioneers in working with men like this was Robert Bly.
Oh, right.
And are you familiar with Robert Bly's work?
Fire in the Belly.
He's a poet. He wrote a great book called Iron John.
Oh yeah, so that was a classic.
Yeah,
that was like
Iron
one
John.
of the biggest.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a book about men that big since then. Was that the 80s?
Yeah, probably.
It was.
I think it was
It
the
was the
80s.
80s. It was
Yeah.
when all the jokes started coming around about men gathering together and beating on a drum and hugging a lot.
Yeah.
So my Korean name is Iron. So I was going to call my book
beautiful.
Iron John, but they're like, no, you can't do that.
Because there's Robert Bly would have something. He'd write a poem about you or something. Yeah.
It would be hard to. That would be a joke if I called my name. But anyway.
But what's interesting is in this conversation that we're having already, right, is we're talking about men and manliness. And something that came to my attention not too long ago is when you're looking at neuroscience today. Because, neuroscience has just been growing in leaps and bounds. And having an understanding of what hormones actually do to the brain is fascinating. It's more nuanced, our understanding of it now. And testosterone is not what we all thought it was. And this is a very fascinating concept, right? Is that when we say testosterone, we start to have images. So
weights, boners,
bones,
right,
right, exactly. Alpha male,
the puffed out chest, right?
Exactly,
right.
all the stuff, anger,
bullies,
bullies, right? Exactly, hair. Well, maybe hair, okay. But the reality is, they understand now that testosterone does not make a man behave in those stereotypical male ways, right? It's not what happens at all. Testosterone amplifies your tendencies. So, for example, if a man is a loving father who really spends time with the kids and is understanding with the kids, takes care of the kids, and supports his wife, if he has more testosterone in his system, he becomes more loving to the kids. He becomes more attentive to his wife. But if somebody is a bully and that bully is taking steroids, now that bully becomes more angry, more bullish. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So testosterone then it amplifies whatever's happening inside or whatever you're going through.
Exactly. So this is really
it's like alcohol.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But what I love about this concept is what's more natural than testosterone? Nature has given males this hormone, right?
Right.
So what does it mean about what maleness is? Maleness can be understanding and loving and sensitive. There is a side to that that's available there, right? it can also be strong. It can also be don't take shit from anybody. It can be that as well, right?
Sure.
No
so
more
the thing
Mr.
is,
Nice Guy.
Yeah, so there's this spectrum of maleness, and testosterone just amplifies wherever you are in your personality.
Yeah, you're reminding me of a very controversial comedian, Bill Cosby, in an old joke that he had about cocaine. He said, "Yeah, I take cocaine. Why do you take the cocaine? Well, it intensifies my personality." And he says, "Well, what if you're an asshole?"
Right. I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah, totally. But yeah, it's interesting how we get this idea about what we think something is. And then we always find out that, nature already had a much more diverse plan for that.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is I wonder if we didn't have these images of what testosterone should look like and how it should manifest, maybe testosterone, we would allow it to manifest in different ways that are actually more healthy, right? So when you said testosterone, we said muscles and boners and Ferraris and whatever. But if that wasn't the image, if testosterone also meant feeling vulnerability or feeling happy, joy, or sad, or whatever.
Resilience, even.
Yeah, then actually just redefining that word and allowing that to be something different can ripple through your definitions of man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the hair is an issue. Hair on your back. It's still an issue. Thanks, testosterone. You're amplifying my hair.
So, John, did you have heroes growing up?
Yes. And you know what? What's interesting is my dad wasn't a hero to me, and I had to be very honest with it because I can't not be who I preached for men to be. And so my dad's an alcoholic. He came to America. He did a lot of great things. Like he joined the military twice. He came to America with $500 and 2 kids, worked his ass off. But he never taught me how to throw a ball. He never told me I was good. He never hugged me, loved me. Like not a lot of emotional intelligence. That being said, he's also someone who grew up making his own shoes in poverty in Korea. Like, so, you can't expect someone like that to actually, have studied psychology or, so, but because of that, but that doesn't mean that that's not going to affect his child. So, I grew up with pulp culture. So like my dad didn't raise me. I was raised by like Hulk Hogan and like Bruce Lee. And so, my inspirations, people who have, I always tell people that I wish my dad was either Wayne Dyer or Bruce Lee. One or the other. Yeah, if I had to pick. That being, I feel bad because I'm kind of talking shit about my dad.
He would have lasted longer if it was Wayne Dyer.
Yeah, right.
But I do love my dad. I do respect his work ethic and all that. I wrote about him in this book because I didn't know. I didn't think about this, but I didn't think it was going to be translated into different languages. Now it is, because they think it's going to do well. So he actually might read me writing about him.
Yeah.
I'm very worried what he's going to say.
Yeah.
But inspirations, people who have flipped a script, people who have been courageous, people who have done amazing things in the world. Like I have a picture of Steve McQueen there, that poster.
Yeah, I love that. It's great.
He represents adventure. I know that he's an actor. I've never seen any of his movies, but what he has taught me is to seek nectar, to get on on movie sets, he's like shirtless and riding dirt bikes and shit. Like, so that mindset, even people like Quentin Tarantino, who broke, because me studying screenwriting, you're not supposed to have pages and pages of dialogue. He broke rules. He did non-linear storytelling, and he was graphic with humor. Like when a Tarantino movie comes on screen, you already know it's a Tarantino movie, right? So people like that have really inspired me, as in like my art, my way to express, to see the world differently and to be okay with that. Charles Bukowski, who I don't think was a good man, but he was a very honest writer.
He was.
And you can't not respect that, right? So things like that, So I have actually, the inspirations have come from a lot of men, and taking different parts and pieces of men and then forming kind of my own it's like what's that movie where the person takes is it Hannibal Lecter takes the skin? I'm not going dark now.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, and
Silence
he
of the
creates
Lambs,
his
yeah.
own person.
Yeah.
So I've done that with men.
Hello, Clarice.
I don't wear the suit, the skin suit
Clarice.
though.
Yeah, that's a well. Here's a question for you then. So if you've been building your own image of a male, you authored that, right? So
Yeah.
what is an ideal male then? I mean, what does that look like to you?
So I think there is no such thing as a perfect man. Because every man that I admire and I respect, and it doesn't matter whatever their gifts are or because of whatever they are, I also know they're not perfect and they have quote unquote defects.
Oh, what a relief!
Yeah.
I might qualify.
I think we are. I think the qualities of a man, the ability to look inward, right? Hard work, right? Like The Rock represents hard work, right? Waking up at 5 a.m. and like the stuff that he does. Not taking yourself seriously, the ability to respond instead of react. That right there basically takes the 100% and down to like 9%.
Yeah.
Because most men are reactive based on their story. The ability to create a safe space, we mentioned that in this room, right? That's a tool, man. That's an ability. And if you can't create a safe space, it doesn't matter if we're talking about relationships or with your buddy. Like if you can't create a safe space, I don't think you're a man.
Nice.
So like
Beautiful.
in my book I have 66 tips, but I think those are some things that I think are kind of required to be a man. It's not about penis size. It's not about what you drive or how big your empire is. I think it's about character. Who you are, intention, how honest are you? That kind of stuff.
Nice.
Who you are when no
Nice.
one's looking.
Who you are when no one's looking, right? What are you doing when you're alone? But also gifts and hard work, like that stuff is legit too. I think if you're on your couch just crossing fingers and hoping good things will happen, I don't necessarily think that that's my definition of a man. Looking inward would be one of the biggest. Not once, but as a way of life. So like if something happened or there's resistance, I have this tattoo, resist nothing, as a reminder to myself. Before I even speak, first look inward. What is it in me that's triggering something, or why do I not like this person, or whatever it is. That speed bump, that emotional, to look inward first. I know very few. I don't think I know any men. I mean, I know very few, maybe one or two that actually make an effort to do that. I think it's very rare. But here's the thing: if every man did that, it would change the world. Because they would change the relationships they have with their partners and their children and all of that stuff. Road rage, like just, how you treat your servers, like something even that small, I think would set a huge ripple.
It's almost like men need to develop double vision. We have to look outward and we have to look inward at all times.
100%.
But I like what you're saying. Look inward first.
Which is kind of the fundamentals of self-awareness. When people talk about self-awareness, is basically looking at you. It's holding up a mirror, putting a black light to you in the way that you think in your story, taking ownership.
Yeah.
So taking ownership's huge. If you can't take ownership, I don't think you are a man.
I checked out one of your YouTube videos where you were talking about 3 things that every man should do or know.
I made that like 10 years ago.
Yeah. But you know what I liked about it was you seem to have a knack for developing really simple, effective analogies.
Yeah.
It's because I'm a C student.
Oh,
no,
okay.
seriously, it's
Is that what it
because
is?
I can't.
Yeah.
So when I went to therapy school, you learn Freud, you learn these dense theories, and I was thinking to myself, how am I really going to help people? Because I have to John Kim it. I got to put it through my filter, and then it's like
John Kim it.
and then it's one sentence, And so I simplify everything. That's why my whole thing is a shot class, and I've learned that. That works for some people.
Therapy in a shot class.
Coming out as in a couple sentences when it enters in the, as a dense section.
I love it because in that video you had said do walk with mirrors.
Yeah.
It's that idea of look at yourself, pay attention to yourself.
Yeah, not to
I
check
love
your
that.
hair.
Yeah. Right. Well, a little bit, but
a little bit.
a little bit. Yeah.
You gotta have cool hair. That's part
after
of being a
you've
man.
looked inside, then you can look at your hair.
Then you can look
right?
at your hair.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I really think. And then when we talk about fathers and all of that, it would change the world. I really believe that because all that. So like I think everything starts with mindset, right? So like you just said, do walk with mirrors. yes, if you decide to walk with mirrors for one day, that's great, but that's not going to change the world. If you put it high on your list and you decide, you know what, it's who I want to be, I'm going to walk with mirrors every day as much as I can. And I'm knowing that the more I do it, the stronger that muscle will become, right? So looking inward, like whatever that means to you, walking with mirrors, looking at self. What's going to happen is people are going to notice you doing that. And the people that you work out with, or the people that you do podcasts with, or your friend or whatever, they're going to be, and other men, they're going to be like, wow, that's kind of a cool quality. And then that shit starts to spread. And then we have two people that are doing it. And then and then everyone has a list of people that they interact with, whether you're a coach or therapist or just, whatever. And so then, it's exponential compounded growth, right? Starting with that one person, and then the quality moving on and on and on and on. So
nice. Very nice.
Who do you feel most connected to as your tribe? Like when you're doing this, obviously you're being authentic. I mean, you're sharing your process. You're being vulnerable. You're practicing the art of communicating that vulnerability. Broadly, what would you say your tribe is?
Yeah, so I love the word tribe because I think the greatest misconception about self-help is the word self. That we actually are not meant to do life alone. I believe in having different tribes and that it's okay. So I don't think we should have 50 people in our tribe and like they all get along there. I've got my fitness friends and I get a lot out of them. And it doesn't mean that we just talk about lifting. We also talk about other things in life, but they're kind of generally my fitness friends. And we ride motorcycles and eat burgers and have beers, right? That satisfies a certain part of me, right? Then I've got other friends that I could sit down and eat crepes with and talk about my feelings in the world and the universe and how we're all connected. Now, my fitness friends have no interest in doing that, maybe a little bit, but they generally don't. And these guys, my crepe friends, don't necessarily want to do snatches, talk about squats.
Right.
But those are both part of me. And so I think it's great to have tribes. This is under the umbrella of self-care. And get what you want here and get your fuel, and then get what you want here and get your fuel. It doesn't mean that you're fake, right? I'm not a different person around this tribe and a different person around this tribe. I get different things out of those tribes, right?
Makes
so then
sense.
I also have an entrepreneurs group, and then of course, intimate relationship and all of that. And some of it overlaps. But I think it's okay to have different tribes.
Yeah.
People who only have one tribe, like, let's say you're really into yoga and all you have is your yoga tribe, they're not getting the stretch because now their world is very small in that bubble, So I would encourage the whole box of crayons.
Yeah. I see why you're an effective therapist, an effective coach.
It's subjective, but okay.
Yeah. Well, subjective data is good, right? We need subjective data, right? I was going to say, so I'm an acupuncturist, and one of the things I learned a long time ago about ancient doctors in China is that the local doctor in a village is the person who at one moment needs to be able to treat the emperor, and the next moment they're treating a peasant.
Ooh,
and they've got to have that social flexibility to be able to interact with anybody in society. So you've got to eat burgers and ride motorcycles and do squats.
Yes.
And you've also got to share your feelings. And
right.
That's a skill.
Well, it's not like that, but it's like, if I'm going to talk about men, I'm not going to just say we need to be vulnerable and meditate and drink tea. Like it's not true.
Meditate with weights on you, right?
Yeah. We all have different parts of us. And I think that journey, that connection to all those parts, that's what makes you whole.
Yeah.
And you can be into cars and be a gearhead and lift weights. That doesn't make you dumb. That's just a part of being a man too. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to look at that and say that is too much testosterone or whatever in quotes, because I love that shit too. I could talk about motorcycles all day, but I also could talk about love and how I feel.
Well, isn't that amazing when you get a chance to interact with people who transcend or at least are part of those concentric spaces, like where there's overlap. Like you have friends that you can go and do martial
so those
arts
are the
with,
unicorns.
exercise with,
okay,
go
right.
have a fancy meal with, talk about your feelings, spirituality, et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera.
and you know what? I gotta say, for me, those are the unicorns. I love men. Oh, that's very sweet. I love men that actually they have all those elements.
Yeah.
And when you hang out with them, you could actually share those moments, but also go do some activities and go ride dirt bikes and do all that. And but the reason why I think people need separate tribes is because most people don't have that. Most people have their groups of friends and they're very specific. Maybe it's history. They went to college together, or maybe it's, they're tech, or they're, this or that. It's hard to find a friend who's so
diverse.
Yeah, so diverse.
Yeah, it's true. It's rare.
It's rare, yeah.
But
so
what an
if you do have
amazing
friends like
thing.
that, hold on to them.
I was thinking about getting rid of him, so thanks for that.
Yeah.
No, you guys should hold on to each other. I think.
Okay. All right. Sorry,
Very
Satch.
nice.
Can't get rid of you this week.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. But we're like that, you and I. I mean, all of our close friends are like that. Our close circle of friends are.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Yeah, I mean, how Carlos and I met was through martial arts.
Oh, nice.
So that's warriorship. I mean,
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
more male
yeah.
than that? Yet this is the guy that I can cry in front of and tell him about what I'm struggling with in
Yeah.
my life. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
we've created that range within our circle of friends because we all recognize that we needed that.
Yeah, and there's something that we get from other men that we just can't from women. We just can't.
It's true.
There's a
There are
male
differences.
bonding, and there's stuff that women get from each other that they can't get from men. So that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We need Tina to leave the room. Sorry, Tina. No, that's all right. Yeah.
You're listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Up next, Carlos and Satch continue their amazing conversation with John Kim, the angry therapist. They talk about why it's okay to feel anger, chasing versus attracting, and why dogs are the best therapists.
Well, hey, can we talk about anger?
Yes,
a little bit?
of course.
Right. Okay. So, I love the name of your podcast, The Angry Therapist,
Yeah.
and I have all kinds of interesting thoughts and ideas and questions about anger and where that came from your perspective.
Sure.
Now, I think kind of a neat way to start this piece of the conversation is something that I've quoted before. Now, my friends know that I like the Eagles, right? Don Henley from the Eagles has a lyric in one of his songs that says, "They say that anger is just love disappointed." And that really struck me. And
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that for years now, ever since I've heard that. And I keep testing it out. Is that true? Is that true? Is anger just love that's disappointed? I wonder. And what better person to ask than the angry therapist?
Wow, man, is it love, disappointed? So I used to be a very angry person. I didn't just, sit there and think, okay, what's a cool, although the happy therapist wasn't that interesting. I was very angry, and I was very angry because I was unhappy. I was miserable. I was a miserable fuck. I was also going through heartbreak. So this is, maybe there's truth there where if you have been through heartbreak, then that means you have been hurt. And anger is usually secondary, feeling. So from the hurt, you start to become angry. And then because of the anger, you start coping in possibly self-destructive ways. You start to run away from yourself. I think anger can also be a really healthy, powerful thing if you channel it right. If you take your anger and you channel it into street fighting because you are great at martial arts, then that's very self-destructive. And but if you channel that anger into, say, being a better artist or a writer, you channel that into your fitness, you channel it into whatever, or running with your cause, your purpose, your flag. Then I think anger can be one of the most powerful things that we have. But also, it's okay to feel angry.
It's mature versus immature handling of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not okay to throw chairs and shit, but it's okay to feel anger.
Yeah.
Because if you don't allow yourself to feel anger, then it just amplifies.
Yeah.
Then now you're bashing yourself because then there's shame about that feeling.
I'm glad you just said that because not too long ago, I was angry at somebody. And I was disassociating myself from the anger because I was taking the approach that, hey, I'm, a self-improvement person, right? I'm somebody on a bit of a spiritual path. I'm a mind-body guy, right? I shouldn't be angry, right? And then I took a different approach. I thought, wait a minute, I'm separating myself from anger. That anger is me. Anger is a part of who I am. I am anger, right? And if I'm hungry, I am hunger. And as soon as I accepted that stop making that anger not about me. That anger is me. I am that anger. I am that anger towards that person. I suddenly felt better about that person.
Yeah, and I don't think
I accepted it.
I don't think that you are that anger. I think you're experiencing anger as you are experiencing hunger, as you're experiencing, horny or whatever it is. And so that distance causes you to not internalize it.
Yeah.
So it's like out here. You guys know who Jack Kornfield is?
Yes.
Right. So when you think about Jack Kornfield, I mean, he's all about mindfulness, and he's got the gentle voice and all that. I was listening to something that he was saying on a podcast, and he used the word fuckface. And I was like, holy shit, he said fuckface. And I loved it. He was talking about, I think he was building something. He was very frustrated with construction people or something. They were, digging him around or whatever. In that moment, I realized he's human. You know what I'm saying? And I know he studies, I think, Buddhism and all this stuff, but he's human.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why I call myself the angry therapist is also because therapists aren't supposed to feel or show themselves. So to have a therapist who's also angry is my way of saying that I am also human.
Yeah, there's this expectation that therapists' lives are perfect and they have to be emotionally neutral all the time and detached and things like that.
Which I get, and there's theories behind that.
Sure.
But the byproduct of that is a lot of people wearing veneers, a lot of people not showing themselves.
Yeah.
And I get the boundary stuff. I get why clinically that is safe. But then our visual of a therapist are just a lot of faces, not a lot of humans. So a lot of cardboard cutouts and not a lot of three-dimensional people.
Yeah.
That's why I decided to put on the hat of a life coach and say, you know what, if you want to talk about life, let's do life while we're talking, and let's go walk around the lake.
Yeah.
Because
it seems like it's about congruence more than anything. If you are congruent with, and if you're living or making your best effort to live the life that you're attempting to convey to others, there's sincerity, there's genuineness involved in that, and you're not going to be perfect. You're going to be admitting who you are, and you can still give people a lot of great advice or even help them to reflect and find answers. But even more so if you can embody the idea of being honest.
Right.
So it seems to make a lot of sense.
Carlos, don't you think the word coach, right, automatically brings up more the idea of, like a football coach, a basketball coach.
It does.
You're allowed to cuss and you're allowed to get angry.
Right.
And
There's a lot less, right.
Yeah.
Because there's a little more friendly kind of thing.
Yeah, because a therapist, the word therapy means to treat.
Sure. Right? So you think doctor.
To treat. Yeah.
I'm
doing something to you to make you better, as opposed to I'm going to inspire you to work harder or to change the way you're approaching something.
Indeed. And a coach doesn't necessarily have to be the best football player necessarily. They have to understand how to get you to be performing at a high level of performance, and they have to understand the game and the strategies involved in managing a group of people. They're a leader of sorts, and they could also be too old to be doing that sport, but they're still going to give you wonderful advice. Who's that awesome coach that you quote sometimes? And he's got some really great. He's like basically a life coach.
Oh, John Wooden.
John Wooden.
Yeah,
there
from
you go.
the UCLA basketball coach from back in the day.
I'm so glad you turned me on to him because everything I've ever seen of him has just been incredible.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah.
You know John Wooden. Oh well.
Actually, I'm not embarrassed to say it as a man. I know nothing about sports.
Well,
and I'm okay with it.
This.
What is football?
Satch is a football fan for sure.
Right.
I'm not, but he turned me on to this coach, John Wooden,
who's a basketball coach.
Oh, he's a basketball coach.
Yeah,
See, there you go.
Yeah.
There's proof of my ignorance.
You also know nothing about sports.
I know nothing about sports.
This is the thing. I'm like, out of all of our crew, like you all describe me as like the super kind, sweet, loving guy, and I'm like on Sundays, I'm like, jam the ball down their fucking throat. I mean, I like sports, right? So go ahead.
Yeah.
So that coach, John.
Yeah, but he is he's taken that attitude. In a sense, he's a life coach, not just a basketball coach. Right. I mean, the focus for him is always on mindset and having the proper attitude, not about winning, but winning your own inner game of who it is that you're you're bringing to the game, not what the end result of the score is.
But that's what probably makes him an amazing coach.
Truly.
And the
Right.
most winningest coach of all
Yeah.
time in
Yeah.
college basketball. You know what I mean? It's just what he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other funny thing about him is he remembers the name of every single player he'd ever coached in
Wow.
this entire long career.
Wow.
Like people are always surprised at that.
That's
you
That's
know?
a person who values people.
He does. He values people. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, the other funny thing about him is he's this actually really sweet, soft-spoken man. But he would ride his players in a very different way. Like
Right, there's the other side of him.
his first
Yeah.
lesson for
Yeah.
all the players he had was, I'm going to teach you how to properly put on your socks. Because if you don't put your socks and shoes on properly, then you're going to get blisters. If you get blisters, you can't play.
Ooh, I like that.
You know what I mean?
like that.
And he would just, you
Yeah.
know, yeah. But
One of my tips
awesome.
in here is to make your bed.
Make
and
your
as
bed.
simple as that is, so when I was married, I never made my bed. I was like, what's the point? It's going to get messed up. No one's coming here.
Yeah.
But there's something about getting up in the morning and making your bed because you're telling yourself you're going out to the world to do something.
Right.
You know, it's more of the psychology. And of course, I was an idiot. And I was a boy. I didn't. You know, I just thought logically it's going to get messed up anyway. So I never made my bed. But you're also telling your partner that you're 12.
Yeah,
You know? So,
That's
a good
why-
point. That's a
right.
good point.
That's true.
But that socks reminds me of that. How small actions like that can tell your psychology.
I'd like to go back to anger for a moment. A teacher of mine, Michael Watson, mentioned something in one of his classes. He said, anger is a distortion. Anger is a distortion. He said, what do you mean when you say you're angry? And, you know, he started off by asking, well, you know, is anger an emotion? And most people are kind of nodding like, yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
but is it? You know, is it really describing an emotion or is it just a distortion? So he goes on to talk about it in a little more detail. And, you know, he postulates this really kind of interesting question, which is, you know, if you take anything that you say, I love you, you're really sweet, you're amazing, and put that through a really loud sound system and crank up the volume, it's going to make your ears bleed. It's going to hurt. It's not going to sound sweet. It's going to sound like, you know, just terrible, right? So anything that you distort to a large enough extent is going to be painful and uncomfortable. So the question was, you know, what kind of anger is this? Are you feeling disappointed? Are you feeling like someone broke your rules?
Right.
Are you feeling frustrated? Are
Right.
you
So it's
feeling
where's anger
rage,
coming from?
hatred?
Yeah.
Are you annoyed? You know, there's so many different words that you could use for anger, but anger by itself doesn't describe anything. It just says that there's this huge annoyance of some kind, and you don't really know what it means until you get down to the, you know, strip back the layers, as you said, the onion, but, you know, not to make you cry, but, you know, you're just peeling it back to see what's underneath that.
Right.
What are your thoughts of that?
I love that. So if I was to describe anger, I think it's residue. I think it's residue from whether it's pain, whatever other stuff that's happening. I like the distortion piece, you know, because anger usually is what amplifies us to do things. I think anger is also sometimes a reaction. You know, I think when you're not angry, you can actually respond. There's that speed bump. There's that looking inward. I think when people are angry, it's their knee jerk. And that knee jerk is tied to a lot of shit in the past, right? Everything from how you were raised to your definitions to what's happened to you. And within, you know, before you can even think, the anger's already out. So anger, I think, is a reaction. Anger, I think, is residue from something else, you know, like plaque. And if you don't scrape that shit off or work on it, it's always just, you can have a cavity.
Yeah.
You're gonna, you know,
Yeah.
that anger is going to, it's going to be like the virus that messes up your life. I mean, I was that way. So I'm a big believer in our states. Anger is definitely lower frequency state.
Yeah.
I think we're either creating in a creating state, which is the higher states, you know, love, gratitude, creativity, optimism, all this stuff, or we're in the survival state, which is panic, victim mode, the sky is falling. And whenever you're in a survival state, you're not going to hit flow states. Whenever you're in a survival state, right? And this is the difference between chasing and attracting. So most of my life, I was chasing, exchanging my truth for membership.
Wow.
Desperation. I need to sell the screenplay. I need to get the house. I need it, or else I'm nothing, right? So this is in a very lower, and nothing happens to you. Stars don't line up. When you're in an attracting state, meaning standing on your truth, accepting your story, allowing yourself to feel, being grateful for everything you have, also busting your balls and working hard and everything else, then shit happens.
Wow.
Doors open up, and I'm still building, but I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life because I went from a negative chasing state to a positive attracting state.
What a great distinction that is. Isn't it a
that's
great distinction?
Great. That's
Chasing
awesome.
versus attracting.
Wow, I like
and
that a lot.
attracting doesn't mean sitting on your couch, crossing your fingers, and just visualizing.
Right,
I mean, you
right.
have to put, work and intention behind it, of course.
You have to be the attractor.
You have to be the attractor.
Yeah.
I think we are all instruments.
Yeah.
I really do. And I know a lot of people believe in luck and whatever. If I told you how this happened, it's straight up a miracle. Like, it would blow your mind how this happened. People think I just got a book deal film. It did not happen that way. I sent a query letter. No one even takes query letters, to an agent that I heard on a podcast who said on the podcast, don't ever send me query letters. I could count on one hand how many I've even read, let alone took on as clients in the 30 years I've been doing this.
Did you take that on as a challenge?
No, I was like, I just had this feeling like I want her to be my book agent.
Wow.
She had that New York, she's been in it for 30 years. And I was like, I want her. So she was one of the people I sent the query letter to.
So
She answered me.
Exactly what she told you not to do.
And she answered. Not only that, she's the reason why this happened. So this is a manifestation of not only what was in my head, but my story, and then all coming to so it's higher than me. It's higher frequency shit. Like it's this is an example of being in an attracting state.
Right.
I believe.
So the manifestation of your book is that. Yeah. And the question is, if you could go back to that.
I forgot the audience can't see what I'm holding up.
Yeah, exactly.
He was holding up his book, everybody.
Is he holding up coffee? What is he holding up?
Well, that too. Yeah.
The person you were being at the time when you decided, okay, if you went back in time and you dropped into yourself, and the person you were being at the time when you decided that you were going to write that freaking letter to her because you needed to be aligned with this person, or that this person needed to be at. Who were you in that moment that was different than, say, like an hour before or 15 minutes before? I mean, did you shift into something that you decided, hey, this is me, this is who I need to be?
It was, I teach a lot about this concept I heard a long time ago, which is to me, by me, for me, through me. So to me is the most powerless state. And that's when, my boyfriend dumped me. But that being said, there is shit that happens in the world that is legitimately things happen to us, like sexual assault, car accidents, people getting eaten by tigers. There's nothing, but that mindset I'm talking about. So if you have a to me mindset, right? So in my 20s and 30s, I was very victim mode. You're powerless. By me is basically my way or the highway. I can do this all by myself, which is not sustainable, and it's a lot of ego. For me is when you get to a place where you're like, I deserve this. I deserve a book deal. I worked my ass off, right? But the highest is through me. Through me is when you actually believe you're a conduit, and there's something working through you. Very little, no ego. And so we kind of fall in and out of these states. And so with this, even when I was sending the email, I was in a very through me state. And then I was thinking about all the people that I could reach, the importance of having a conversation about men, things that weren't about me or the house that I want, or the car that I want, right? And I think even that energy and that intention of being in that state, I think that shit ripples. I just don't think we physically see it.
Yeah.
But I think that for something in her spidey sense or whatever made her answer this email, and then she read it, and then she, you know what I'm saying? And you could call it timing or whatever. That turned into, I think I could sell this, and that turned into meetings. And, of course, there's a lot of other hiccups in there, whatever. But this was a manifestation, I believe, of being in a through me state, in an attracting state. Now, if I wrote the email like, fuck, man, if I don't get this, I'm over, I'm nothing, this is the last chance I have no, if I did it out of desperation, spam box.
Yeah.
100%.
So, to me, by me, for me, and through me. Wow, that's a great model to work with.
I like that too.
Most people live in a to me state.
Yeah, definitely.
I could see
He
that.
left me.
Yeah.
he did this to me. They took my money.
Right. I'm instantly, as you were describing that, I'm thinking of all these different events and situations and times in my life when I've been all of those at different
Sure.
times,
Yeah, me too.
and
Me
the
too.
results of each one of those. Like I
Yeah.
can think of times when I was more like that, and I was feeling a certain way, and I was more like something else when things were
Right.
working out. And
Right.
so, I mean, instantaneously, I see it.
It's also micro and macro. So you could take a day and you could kind of say, where am I in what stages? And you kind of go through. Or you could say the last 10 years, have I generally been in a through me, or have I generally been in a to me or for me? For me is not bad. For me is where you actually kind of turn the corner and believe that you start deserving some shit, you know?
Yeah.
Seems like, those of us on a personal growth, self-development path need to start looking at our lives through those filters. Otherwise, we're not going to understand, the pattern well enough to be able to excel and
Yeah.
to thrive
Yeah.
and get beyond just the survival space.
I think most of us that are in a survival state, and speaking of anger, when you're there, you are nothing but angry, right? Because you're creating your own prison, aren't aware of it. They're blaming other things and why they're in that position, or why they're not making money, or don't have a boyfriend, or whatever it is. Being aware that it's their own state and their own thinking that is causing them to be there, I think, is the first domino. And that's the hardest one to push. And then you start, because I think there's nothing more convincing than an experience. So like, once I had this experience, then it's like, oh, now what else could I do? You know what I'm saying? Then you start, because we're evolving, curious, very ambitious creatures. And so once you prove yourself wrong, or you give yourself an experience that you didn't think, that's when shit shifts, And I think that's when you're kind of pulled out of the quicksand and now start moving in a through me, for me, like up in the higher frequencies. And I think that's when you start attracting. And people want to be around you, and people, and it's like, oh, that person has really good energy or something.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then, and that translates into pitch meetings or whatever you're pursuing, right? Or if you're an athlete or whatever it is. And then I think it's exponential. Then I think that like, if you're pedaling the bike that fast, you could take your hands off the handlebars. Like I think it could get to the point where you're popping wheelies and shit. And then the growth and the stuff that happens to you can be compounded.
Every time we interview a guest, and we've interviewed some pretty amazing people, there's always like one or two
Present
things.
company included.
Yeah, present company included, yeah. There's always like one key thing, maybe two key things that I take from those interviews that are transformative moments.
Yeah.
This is the one
This is
for
definitely
Oh,
one,
nice.
for
yeah,
sure.
very
Awesome.
good, very good. So may I just say,
please.
감사합니다.
Oh, shit.
Thank you.
Korean. All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
감사합니다.
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 It's reminding me of something, and I think it may have originated with Neil Donald Walsh, I'm not sure, but this whole idea of be, do, have. That concept that you have to ask yourself, who do I need to be in order to do what I need to do in order to have whatever it is that I want to have. And most people kind of mix the order around. They learn incorrectly that you have to do a bunch of stuff and have a bunch of stuff before you can be who you need to be.
Yeah.
And it's really not true. And
the other way.
in those of us who do mindset work or hypnosis or NLP, any of that kind of stuff where you're creatively visualizing stuff, the question of who do I need to be is so important, because it'll drive you to do anything that it takes to get there. And of course, if you persist in that long enough, that's not just being in the armchair visualizing what it will be. It's literally getting yourself motivated and shifting your beliefs enough so that you'll take action. And when you persist in that, you'll get it. You'll get something, whatever that result is.
Sure.
And you'll get feedback from whatever that
Sure.
is, and you're going to learn from it. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think also a lot of times what you get may not be what you want at the moment.
Yeah.
But you need to go through it because seeds are being planted and there's something amazing that's going to happen from that. So for example, my idea of a therapist was the latte, BMW, private practice, wrinkle-free pants, the colorful socks, and those silver balls. Like, that's what I wanted. That was a dream. And if I could just do that and make six figures, I'd be happy, right? Now the idea of that, it would be like hell, nightmare. But I didn't know that at the time. So the universe threw me into nonprofit, and I didn't want to work with kids. I didn't want to wear a uniform. I didn't want to feel like a camp counselor, especially after going and getting my master's and all this. But it was in working with teenagers where I got the Fire for Men, which would later turn into a book. It was working with teenagers where I came up with my own concepts about creating a container and a safe space. because they had something called TC, which is therapeutic community, where you rebuild yourself through other people. It was in those 5 years that I learned about myself and what it looks like to be a man and to make my bed and not pee in the shower and whatever it is, right? All of that. So it was my own treatment. And now looking back, I think Steve Jobs says that you can't connect dots until you look back. When I was in it, I felt like I was in the trenches. And I was like, I felt empowered because I was helping people. But looking back, that was the act break. That was the pivotal points in my life where if I took that out, my story would crumble. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so sometimes if you stand on your truth and you do what is authentic or what is honest to you and live kind of a through me life, you're going to come across things that you may not want to be a part of, but you should probably lean into because there's something in there, whether it's a job or a relationship or a friendship or whatever, that later you're going to be like, oh my God, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have this.
Reminds me of the Hindu concept that every beautiful lotus that we see on the surface of the pond is rooted in the mud. That it started off growing in this sloshy, filthy goop at the bottom of a pond.
Yeah.
And it couldn't understand that at the time.
Right,
you know what I
right,
mean? But
right.
eventually it blooms outside of the water. So, there you have it. We have these difficult situations or things that we don't understand, and that's our pond scum that we're growing out of.
Yeah, and so if you're in something now and you feel like you are in your pond scum?
Pond scum.
Pond scum.
Yeah, it's a technical term.
Yeah. If whatever you're doing, it feels honest to you, maybe you're meant to be there. Maybe in that scum, there are diamonds and pearls and other things that you won't probably realize till later, but that are going to be pivotal in your story.
Yeah.
Might not be what you wanted, but it could be what you need.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Or if you sort of, coming back to the be, do, have mindset, right? And earlier we were talking about, heroes and stuff. It's like if you're sitting in the midst of your pond scum, say, what would my hero do with this pond scum? If I'm in this tough situation, what would this hero of mine do? How would they handle it? Or what would this other hero of mine do? Right? And
what would Superman do?
Yeah, what would Superman do? So who do I need to be right now in the midst of this messed up situation, in order to use it as fertilizer, and to do something?
The sentence or the mindset, who do I need to be or where do I need to go? Who do I need to become? That's a very empowering, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like, this is who I am and what I've went through. That's very stunted. There's just ceiling
Well said,
instantly.
yeah.
But it's like, who do I need to become?
That's like driving forward, looking through your rearview mirror the entire time.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
Why would you do that?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So, question for you.
Yes.
Is everybody a therapist? And why are dogs such good therapists?
Ooh, I think Charles Bukowski said that dogs are the angels of Earth, and I believe it because you could just they're so transparent. You could see what they're thinking just by their eyes.
Yeah, right.
Dogs are great therapists because they don't judge you. It's funny that you said this because I think dogs hold the safest spaces.
They do,
Yeah.
don't they?
Because there's
They
no
do.
judgment.
Yeah.
It's
Just
like
love you.
they
Yeah.
just love you no matter what. You could be beating them. They're like, I still love you. I still
know.
love you. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. You look in their eyes and it's like you just fall into them. They're so accepting. I just love it.
It's and I know and some people believe that dogs can talk, but they're transparent, so it means they're vulnerable. They're empathetic, and they're non-judgmental. And those are the three things that you need to create a safe space. So dogs are amazing therapists.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And is everyone a therapist?
Is everyone a therapist?
I think to a certain extent, absolutely, because as long as you are practicing empathy and compassion, and you're caring and you're listening to a story, being a therapist isn't about giving advice. Being a therapist is about holding space. So if you're able to actually listen to someone you care about and try to understand before trying to be understood, there's a therapeutic process happening. You may not have the clinical background, but the therapeutic process is happening with all of us. So it's actually happening in this room.
Yeah. Right. Good answer.
Thank you.
I love it. So, John, what's next for you besides, obviously, you said HarperCollins is taking on your book.
Yeah.
What other projects are you working on?
Man, I'm always working on projects. I have just created 2 audio courses.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
One is called Bulletproof Your Relationship. It's a 9-hour audio course because I love doing podcasts about tools on how to relationship better. And yes, I use the word relationship as a verb because it takes action to build one. And then the other one is on the other spectrum because I started getting emails about, well, I'm single. What about all of us? So I did an audio course called Single on Purpose. And I thought that'd be kind of interesting. Like, why do you have to be with someone? Let's talk about being single and being okay with it. Let's do the work before you get into something so you bring more to the table.
Very cool.
And I think that's something that no one does because we just jump from one lily pad to another lily pad, like looking for the one. But let's not do that. Let's work on ourselves.
Yeah.
So I did that. Yeah.
That's
and then,
nice. Yeah.
Then this book coming out and then I teach for my life coaching company, and then I'm getting into retreats now.
Nice.
So I just ran one in Joshua Tree with about 18 people.
Are they for the students or for just anyone?
No, I through the Angry Therapist, I just rented this giant yoga house in Joshua Tree. And the internet, they fall from the sky, filled it up instantly. So it's a combination of concepts and yoga and mindfulness and energy coaches. And so I put a little team together.
Nice.
Awesome.
And you get that feeling of the Breakfast Club.
Cool.
It was either going to be the Breakfast Club or Jersey Shore, and I didn't know which one. But it
Breakfast Club.
Breakfast
That's
Club,
better.
yeah.
Better choice.
Better
Good choice.
for sure.
Yeah,
That's the right
There
choice.
wasn't any drama. It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Excellent. Wow.
Yeah, and I don't know what's new for me. I don't know what's next for me. I'm hoping that with this book, it opens doors to other projects and all that.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Next is the Enlightened Therapist.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we got to have goals, right?
Yeah, we do. We
Gotta
can all
have goals.
aspire. Yeah. I love that you chose that name because it really does make it's a head turner. It's kind of like it makes your head spin around. Go, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
What's that about?
Yeah. I never meant for it to. I mean, I didn't know anyone would even follow me. It was just my truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somehow that always works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to be yourself.
That always works the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
And you're having fun, right? I mean, I know it's a lot of hard work, but I mean, there's still an element of fun to it, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm having. I always tell my friends. My friends think I run a pyramid scheme. They have no idea what I do.
It's Amway.
Yeah.
It's always the people closest to us that
But
get it, right?
a lot of my friends have quote unquote real jobs, and so if I told them if I ever complain about my life, just punch me in the face. Just I mean, yeah, the freedom to create content, talk to yourself, write blogs, and kind of make your own schedule. That's and a lot of people are doing this, which is such a blessing because of the internet. The whole idea of an influencer and like the wall coming down where you could just go to your audience, whether you are creating art or being heard or writing self-betterment books, it doesn't matter. That has changed the world, man. That has given everyone a microphone.
Yeah, that's
a
right.
megaphone.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's amazing.
Could you maybe just take a moment and describe like where can people find all these things about you?
Yeah, so lately I've been super active on Instagram. So just at The Angry Therapist, and my website is theangrytherapist.com, and Facebook, The Angry Therapist.
All right, great,
Yeah.
great.
Cool. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. It's been
absolutely.
great. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you guys coming out.
Yeah, thanks for taking us into your safe space.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get an invoice, but whatever.
Yeah, okay. We won't pay it. Yeah, no.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Very special thanks to our guest today, John Kim, the Angry Therapist. If you want to get in touch with John, you can find his website at theangrytherapist.com or just look up Angry Therapist on social media. You'll find him. This show is produced by Oliver Altine. That's me. Our theme music is composed by Oliver Altine. That's me too. Make sure to subscribe to The Authenticity Show on iTunes, Android Market, Stitcher Radio. Like us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, and check out our website at authenticityshow.com. Thank you for listening, and have an authentic day.